Vinhos.
Media Lab. Primeiro lugar.
My bookmarks are a mess. I never keep good bookmarks, so I'm hopeless in bookmarks.
What about wines?
What about
Wine.
wine?
Vinhos, que é uma preferência que o Marcon lembrou.
Well, I haven't figured out a way to transmit wine, which would be a nice thing to achieve. Especially, in fact, just transmitting water would be a great advantage.
Nós estamos a alguns dias do ano 2000 e com ele o tão temido bug aqui no Brasil, bug do ano 2000. Que recomendação você faria para os brasileiros que estão assistindo essa entrevista e para as pessoas que estão online na internet ouvindo você a respeito da passagem da virada do ano de 1999 para 2000? As pessoas sabem que muita gente já ouviu dizer que os computadores podem apresentar algumas falhas ao não reconhecer, não identificar os 2 zeros misteriosos que vão aparecer, porque eles estão acostumados só a reconhecer o ano por 2 dígitos, e o ano 2000 tem 2 zeros no final, que poderia remeter os computadores para o ano de 1900 e causar uma grande confusão. Que recomendações você faria? Você acha que as pessoas devem se preocupar com essa passagem, com essa virada? E se não for muita indiscrição, eu gostaria de saber aonde você vai passar o Réveillon.
I don't know if you know this. China Airlines has insisted that its executives fly that night on a China Airlines plane. And when I heard that, I thought that was a wonderful solution, because the executives of these companies keep saying there's no problem. So maybe the chairman of the bank should lock himself in the safe, and then if there's a problem, we at least we'll be more confident. But your question is, what would I say to people listening? And the first thing I would say is relax, because part of the problem is being created artificially by humans, and there is in some sense an unnecessary level of anxiousness. But companies and governments really have to pay attention to it, particularly in terms of power. You don't want to lose power. And losing power can be disruptive in many different ways. And I think in general, we're going to do just fine. What most people don't realize is that the so-called Y2K problem is not going to happen at midnight on December 31st. It's going to live on for years, because embedded in little mechanisms will be clocks. And I'll give you an example. If you have a tractor, and this tractor consumes oil, and for some reason the gauge that measures how often you need oil, if it uses a clock that looks at absolute time, suddenly it might think that it doesn't need oil for another 99 years. And that tractor may function perfectly well for 2 or 3, maybe even 4 years, and then one day in the middle of a field, it's going to stop because the engine burnt out, because the oil wasn't being changed.
Mas não vai ser tão simples assim se um cirurgião estiver no meio de uma cirurgia cardíaca, por exemplo.
Se a gente espera.
No, but you're correct. We have to, in the case of tractors, you want to make sure that the embedded computers and people who are doing surgery and so on, they're really testing them out. But my point was a little different. My point was that we're going to see these little problems coming up afterwards, and I suspect that 5 or 10 years from now, there will be competitions to find the last Y2K bug, and people will be looking all over for it. And so it's something that will have a certain lifetime, and major advice is relax to the
No
consumer.
seu Réveillon, você vai viajar de avião nas vésperas do Réveillon?
Na companhia da China.
No, I'm not taking the China Airlines flight. In fact, I suspect it'll be very easy to get a seat on New Year's Eve on any flight. And in fact, some airlines have, just for public relations, have decided they're not going to fly that night. No, I will be in Switzerland on a mountain, safely away, and will look the next morning with the same curiosity as everybody else.
Luciane?
Como a tecnologia pode desenvolver o sentido de criatividade como base intelectual de uma sociedade? E como o senhor vê o papel da universidade? Ela poderia se redefinir para isso?
Well, universities play different roles. I come from a university where our role is dominantly research, where it's supposed to be the birthplace of new ideas. Other universities have a very different role. The role is higher education, much more in a classroom. I think the higher education role will become much more distributed, that universities will find ways to reach out electronically to larger segments of the population, that the physical campus will become less important, that the role in society will become perhaps more important because more people will be involved. People who are in the idea side of the equation will probably find that they still work in specific places, that brilliant people in one field attract other brilliant people in that field and other fields, and there'll be sort of a physical congregation. So if the role of the university is sort of fundamental research, I see the physical congregation as surviving a much longer period. If the role is sort of a national and broader sort of agenda done through a classroom, I see it becoming much more distributed.
Nicolas, nosso tempo está acabando. Eu queria, antes de lhe agradecer, fazer uma última pergunta. O senhor tem, com certeza, nessa sua atividade profissional, feito inúmeras previsões. Essa é uma cobrança, muitas vezes, que os seus interlocutores fazem, talvez até mais do que o seu interesse em fazer tais previsões. E a pergunta é a seguinte: com certeza, algumas dessas previsões que a gente faz não se realizam, porque se a gente fosse possível prever tudo o que acontece no mundo, a vida seria muito mais fácil. No seu ponto de vista, qual assim o ponto que o senhor estimou que fosse ocorrer e que não ocorreu e se acredita que ainda pode acontecer nessa questão da vida digital, do mundo digital?
Before I answer that, let me just, remind you that one of the things we try and do at the Media Lab, and we say this all the time, is not predict the future, but invent it. So many times, when I said things 20 years ago, they were things we were doing. We felt very passionate about it. It wasn't being a pollster or a forecaster where you look at the numbers and you try and predict something. It was, this is what we do and we believe we're going in that direction. But boy, we've made some mistakes. And one of the mistakes that I am just constantly reminded of is that even 15 years ago, I predicted we would all be talking to our computers today. That every single one of us would spend more time talking than any other way, through speech recognition and speech production. And I even imagined that my shower head in the morning would have a little speaker on it, and I would be taking a shower talking to my computer, and it would be talking to me. And it hasn't happened. It's been much, much slower. And there are a number of reasons to explain it after the fact, with hindsight, but it was a major misprediction.
Bem, a vantagem nossa que nós temos é que ainda num programa de televisão como esse a gente pode falar e ser compreendido até graças ao trabalho do tradutor que faz com que o senhor tenha, evidentemente, na velocidade necessária as informações. Eu agradeço muito a sua presença, a de todos os participantes, a você que acompanhou pela primeira vez uma transmissão de um programa gravado através da internet, o que parece um contrassenso, mas que de algum modo faz sentido. E a você que está em casa, até a próxima segunda-feira, sempre às 10h30 da noite. Uma boa noite, uma boa semana e até lá.